Welcome to our talk. This is Cassandra Shank. I am an environmental scientist with ERO Resources Corporation, and together with Jake Harder, we're going to present to you today about a wet meadow restoration project we've been working on for a couple years. The wet meadow restoration project is being undertaken by the Fruitland Irrigation Company on land owned by the company. The purpose of the project is to replace habitat. The company received a grant, a federal grant through the Bureau of Reclamation, and as part of the funding decision, they were instructed to replace the habitat that would be lost from lining the ditch. And so we worked with them to help out. We found some riparian habitat here on property that they owned. This is the Gould Reservoir that actually feeds the canal. And there's a pasture here. This, just to orientate you, we're in Delta County, well, on the border actually of Montrose and Delta County in western Colorado. And we're about 7 miles south of the town of Crawford, the little town of Crawford. And Fruitland Mesa is off this map, but it's to the northwest, and the canal irrigates pasture on Fruitland Mesa. So that gives you some idea of where we're at. So Cattleman's Ditch irrigates the field to the north of this road. There's a little road here, which you can see on the zoomed in aerial. And this pasture, actually this direction is down gradient, of course, and this pasture funnels tailwater through these culverts onto the company's own pasture, which they lease out for grazing. And so when we went out to visit the site, we could see that there were some swales, and we mapped them where the water had eroded. And some of the erosional features are very steep and incised, and we decided not to try to tackle them. Instead, we focused in on this, what we called the center gulch. So that will be the area that we're going to focus in on today. So you can see the issues here. This is facing north or down gradient. You can see the Gould Reservoir here in the distance and the erosion that's been occurring here. You can't really tell from this picture, but it gets suddenly so deep with some severe head cutting that it would be way over our heads to work in there. So the goal of our plan was to build several small rock structures, or Zeedyke structures, in the drainage pattern to control erosion and restore healthy soil conditions. We also wanted to establish new riparian shrub plantings adjacent to the Zeedyke structure. The area is within unoccupied sage-grouse habitat. So the resources that we brought to the table were, first of all, a manual that one of my colleagues had. She gave us this idea. And then quickly we enlisted the help of Dr. Tom Grant and also Nathan Seward, both experienced practitioners with these structures. To get ready to put these in, we were able to do several on-sites with Nathan and Tom, and they helped us really narrow down where we wanted to put the structures and how many. So that enabled us to identify the quantities that we needed and to go ahead and purchase that angular rock, the stone that we needed for the structures, and also logs. So we did hire a contractor to come and stage the rocks at certain sites that were flagged. You saw in the previous photograph. We also organized a workshop, including federal agencies, to help us with hands-on learning so that we had enough people out there to put these in place. One of the things we did get was a permit with the Corps of Engineers, and they have a nationwide permit 27 for projects like this. It was pretty quick and easy process to get the permit in place. They were, you know, pleased to be able to permit it. And it is because of in the state of Colorado, irrigation ditches are considered jurisdictional, and we were planning to fill in below the ordinary high water mark. Okay, so our first workshop was on September 19th, 2019, and we had a really good turnout of volunteers to assist Fruitland Irrigation Company and contractors, myself and Jake. It lasted about 8 hours, and we got participation from the Western Slope Conservation Center, which Jake Harder is the watershed coordinator, and he'll be talking here in a minute. We also had a biologist from the Bureau of Land Management, a biologist from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service because of the interest in the sage-grouse habitat, and a biologist from the Bureau of Reclamation, and people from Colorado Parks and Wildlife, as well as some volunteers from the community. So we completed a log structure and about 3 Zeedyke one-rock dams during that time. And then we had a follow-up workshop to finish the project. So with that, here's the technical notes. This is an excellent resource for anyone interested in these structures, and this is what we used. And Jake is going to talk next about how we implemented these structures. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Jake.
Great, thanks, Cass. Yeah, and that manual that Cass just referenced was really useful, very informative for what I'm going to talk about here, about where to place the structures and how to install them. Okay. Let's get into the next slide, Cass.
Yep. So.
Okay. Yeah, so this is our, thanks for zooming that in. This is our desired conditions. Cass is referencing the drainage that goes down to the reservoir. The water is moving from the bottom of the picture up to the top of the picture, and that's heading north. So the red triangles you see in the drainage there are one-rock dams. I'll talk about those in a minute. And then the green triangles are a log and fabric structure. They're a little bigger. And the reason for that is that there's a pretty significant head cut as you went further down the drainage. So I'll get into the one-rock dams first and kind of how those are put together. This is our first workshop in September. And you can see this one-rock dam is really one rock high. That's kind of where the name comes from. And this one's about 50% complete already. You can see as far as constructing these, there's not a lot of disturbance to the ground. So the only excavation that really needs to occur is in the first sill stones or foundational stones that are right in front of the structure here. Those are pretty large flat rocks dug in so that they are flush with the grade. And they are your foundation. And then on top of those are some larger rocks. This is kind of a close-up of them. This is my little dog Juniper showing them off. So these larger rocks sit on top of the sill stones, and they create the first one rock height. And then maybe Cass, if you could go back to that last slide in front there, and then you can see behind, you start filling in the rest of the structure behind those larger rocks. The water is moving from the left of the picture to the right of the picture. So what we're trying to do is create a high structure in the downstream side of the structure so that it backs water up as it's flowing over it. Okay, now I think you can go ahead and show the finished. Let's see, go one more. Okay, so this is the finished structure. all of these rocks are hand placed, and the reason for that is that they interlock with each other. And so one of the maybe most difficult parts of building this is finding the appropriate rock size and shape to fit together. But really, when you're going to look for this rock or purchase rock or stage it for your structures, you'll want, for your larger rocks, you'll want some in the neighborhood of 8 to 10 inches in diameter for your larger rocks. And then some other rocks, angular in shape, that are from the neighborhood of 4 to 6 inches, because they'll fill in and interlock in the little spaces. And it is kind of an art form when you're putting it together, because you're interlocking these rocks. They don't move. Okay, I'm going to keep moving to the next structure we put down gradient was a log and fabric structure. It's much bigger. This is a picture I found from the Zeedyke manual of a finished structure. It's made for big head cuts. You can see here, you excavate the head cut out into like a squared off cavity, and then I'll talk about how to put this together. Here's our nearly finished, that is our finished product looking upstream. This is a good picture to start with. So this head cut was about 3 foot deep, and we used a backhoe to shape the banks, and then we laid fabric down first into the newly excavated pit, so to speak. And then we put T-posts in along the sides, you can see on the left-hand side of that picture. And then as we started laying logs down, we start wiring them together. All of this is explained in the manual really clearly, but this just kind of gives you a visual. Let's see, here's a great video of how that works. So there was a crew of, I'm not sure how many folks are standing in that picture, but it's quite a big project, and it took us all of about 6 hours to try to put this all together. And you can see how the fabric is laid up and over the sides here, and held into the T-posts. This fabric is like a heavy felt fabric. I think in the future we would probably go with something that is eventually going to break down into the soil, maybe a coconut fiber or something to that effect. The way these are designed is that over time they will fill in, and the head cut will smooth out and create a smooth gradient. The vegetation will fill in, and eventually this kind of goes away into the landscape. The fabric, however, we used, not likely. So in the future, I think we'd use something else. Logs are, the bottom logs were, I think, 10 feet in length, and then we stepped them up to, I believe, 8 foot, 6 foot, and then 4 foot for the top row, wiring the layers in as we went. Here's kind of a finished look of our project looking up the drainage, which is towards the south here. You can see some one rock dams. They're really, they're not obtrusive to the landscape, and they're made to be that way so that they disappear over time. There's not much maintenance with these other than to maybe add a rock, another layer of rock, if that's needed in the future. Key is to, create as minimal impact as possible and reduce the erosion that's going on in the drainage.
So yeah, just to bring it home with the big picture, the reason we were excited about presenting at this conference and choosing these structures is there's really some innovative things about them. Not only are they aesthetically pleasing to look at and they blend in with the natural landscape, they also imitate nature, and they allow these rocks to capture the velocity of the water instead of the soil and spread it laterally, increasing the opportunity for vegetation to take hold. You can see some of this shrub layer in here, some of the sedge and vegetation, the wetland vegetation, we expect to come back and to broaden, almost like a almost like a beaver dam analog too, like a meadow, taking a meadow and just making it more productive, more moist and more productive. Another thing that's interesting, and Jake can speak to this, is that the rocks themselves act as a source of moisture. During hot summer days, they had cooled overnight, so they remain cooler, and then they actually condense water and create more moisture, which creates a positive feedback loop with the plants. So as more vegetation grows, there's more moisture available and more growth occurs, there's more shading, more transpiration, and it's just like a really neat way to assist in the recovery of a riparian area. Okay, I think we're going to move back to the presentation. Thank you so much, Jake, for speaking with us. And we kind of had a multimedia thing going on here. So I'm going to click back to our normal presentation. So just in summary, we had log construction and one rock dam construction. I won't read through this slide, but you can see some of the high points of what we were able to do at this site. We did have to come back and follow up a little over a year later to complete our goals. This is the picture that you had already seen previously. So we're real excited to track the progress over time. So just to summarize the level of effort for anyone interested in doing this, I put this table together so you could see it took about 5 months to plan it, juggling other jobs and other work. It could probably be planned in a quicker time frame. And then just the level of effort to create these structures, it did take quite a few man hours and some rock and materials. We did need to get that 404 permit. So with that, we're going to conclude our talk, and we really thank you for tuning in. Please don't hesitate to contact us. Again, I'm with ERO Resources, and Jake's with the Western Slope Conservation Center. We also want to give a big shout out to Nate and Tom, who helped us. We couldn't have done this project without their support and the variety of people that came and supported this all along as well, including Bill Zeedyke, wherever he is. We really thank him for his vision in putting this handbook together. Okay, thank you.